I'm good.
Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jacob with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. We have we were doing a show the other day with Ron and Marcus, and the show just like went dead. My power went out here, so I have backups and all that kind of stuff now. So normally, when there's interference for whatever reason, we just move the internet to another source. So I have three sources of internet now, and we'll see how that works out. I think we're going to be good, but regardless, if I go off screen again, guys, just continue, and I'll figure out how to get back on because the show in Zoom will continue sometimes without me. So we're back again. Author of Rule of Law: A Nation of Laws, Not of Men. So Ron Bouchard is a master at this information, and of course we have Marcus, who is also a master of this information.
Not really.
Not on the
That's
level of Ron, of course, but you're pretty dialed in, no doubt about it. So that's why it's good to have this little round table. So that we talked about a lot of things on the last show. So I recommend watch if you haven't yet, watch part one. And Ron just basically broke it down for us. All the corruption. We had talked about how at the end of our show we would talk about who the treasonous criminals are. So that will be interesting if we can get to that point. I'm sure we will this time. But what students, parents, and patriots can do right now to restore justice?
I think the number one thing that people need to do, and it's hard to say this because nobody wants to hear it. James Madison said that broad diffusion of knowledge is the weapon for liberty. You can't have liberty without knowledge, and not just any knowledge. You have to have a knowledge of how the founding fathers put this nation into being. And once you understand how the foundation stones upon which this nation was laid, with that foundation was all of the keys to liberty. And we've drifted so far away from those foundation stones, though we have not drifted away from what is written in stone. So the law still remains. The people and the government has just gotten away from the law. As I might have told you, that government is a creature. The Constitution was the cage that bound the creature. Yeah. Because founding fathers knew that when you have power, power tends to get out of hand. So they had to bind it down with the chains of the Constitution. They weren't trying to bind down technology. They weren't trying to bind down anything other than tyranny. They knew how tyrants worked, and they were trying to make sure that tyranny didn't come to America. So all of the Constitution was written to that end. So as the people, we have all political power, not some political power, all. And you ask what we can do. What we need to do is we need to understand what our rights are. And our rights don't come from the Constitution, but some of our rights are enumerated in the Constitution because our rights come from the Creator. But let me read just one of them because this one's very important. This one's from Massachusetts Constitution, which I think has the best Constitution of any in the entire nation. And it was the foundation stone upon which the entire U.S. Constitution was built. But listen to the words. The people have a right in an orderly and peaceful manner to assemble, to consult upon the common good, give instructions to their representatives, and request of the legislative body by right of address, which in the founding era was notice, petition, or remonstrance, redress of the wrongs done to them and the grievances they suffer. See, we're supposed to tell the government when they are violating the law, and the government is supposed to respond. The legislature, in particular, is supposed to fix it. So
what we're seeing right now is they, like you talked about, they in the Constitution there was a cage created around the government, but they have broken through that cage, and now they've created a cage that we can't interfere with them anymore to cause them to uphold the Constitution. They are actually blocking us from that. And like you said in our last show, they're creating laws that should not be anywhere in the books, in relation to the Constitution, but they're doing that anyway. And this is where things are really starting to get, milky and like gravy, and we can't get through that stuff. It's very frustrating. One guy that I do that I've had on shows several times, Mitch Wexler, he talks about how in Texas, the bond fraud for school bonds is out of control. And then on top of that, they're going into and causing the property tax to go to incredible levels. People are losing their homes. This is not just in Texas, in the county that he's working in, but also across the country.
Yeah, in Massachusetts, they sold bonds for the illegal aliens.
Wow.
And those illegal alien bonds didn't do so well. So what they did was they had to sell new bonds for an increased property tax of 13% in Boston alone to make up for the money that they didn't get from the other.
Hmm.
So
Boston,
it's
where
fraud
the
on top of fraud
revolution
on top of
started.
fraud.
How about that?
What's that?
In Boston, where the revolution started, and they're getting away with it. Wow.
Cradle of Liberty. Yeah.
Yep.
Second Amendment time. Might be Second Amendment time.
I agree. Vigilante stuff is coming.
Well, here's the second thing. It says in the Massachusetts Constitution, about the first Article 18, it says we have a right to require an exact and constant observance of fundamental principles of the Constitution. Exact and constant. By right, we have a right to require an exact and constant observance of the Constitution. Now, one of the constitutional principles, which I want to challenge anybody at home who has a brain to listen to these words and tell me where they mean something differently. Because, one of the things that we have a class of lawyers who are cognitively challenged. They don't know how to read plain English. Thomas Jefferson said the Constitution should be so plain, the law should be so plain you could understand while plowing your fields, so that you would know when you're under oppression. So listen to these words. All power residing originally in the people and being derived from them, the several magistrates and offices of government, vested with authority, whether legislative, executive, or judicial, are their substitutes and agents in all times accountable. I read that all the time because there's no gray area there. Either they're all times accountable or they're not all times accountable. Do you find government is accountable these days?
No, absolutely not. And that's very clear that they're accountable to we, the people,
Yep.
But they're not. And they've gotten away with it, I guess, for a period of time where, they've gotten really out of control. And, the words are like there, but it seems like they've built a way of, discounting our words and our laws that have served us in the Constitution. So what's the recourse for the average person now?
We have to send notice to those in government. We have to instruct them of what they're doing and now this is what we've excelled at, and we the people too. We have sent notices, and 90% of the cases they actually do what we tell them. So that's pretty impressive considering even the current state of where we are. They do what we tell them. Now, they don't always come out and say, we did it because he told us. Of course, they're not going to do that, but they do it anyway. So we tell them this law is unconstitutional. They kill the bill. Now, in Massachusetts, they do that as well. But what they do in Massachusetts that's very different is they kill the bill. Then they go in the middle of the night, name it something new, pull the stuff they wanted anyway, and push it down our throats into a new bill.
So how do you counteract that? I mean, that was a way to kind of hold the people doing that accountable. Like, we see what you did. Now you need to go to jail because that's treasonous. You lied to us. You tricked us.
Yes.
That's the people. And Madison said the Constitution doesn't enforce itself. It's up to the people. That's the problem. We have a bunch of people who are asleep at the wheel. The founding fathers knew what it was going to take to start the revolution. It was going to take them doing something, speaking up, and they did. Now, I'm trying to do things peacefully, and that's what I've been doing for 5 years, trying to get the people to do something peacefully, to assert their authority in writing peacefully. But we can't get them to do that. We can't get them to get through the bread and circus long enough to focus. They don't know their rights. They don't know what the law says. All they need to do is read the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights. You don't have to read your state Declaration of Rights. You only have to read the Massachusetts one. Because you don't have rights in Massachusetts, you don't have in Texas or in Florida or in Tennessee. God didn't say, okay, all of you in Massachusetts, you have these rights, and all of you in Texas, you have those rights. That's an impossibility. But we always think we have constitutional rights. We don't have constitutional rights. The Constitution doesn't give us rights. We already have the rights to begin with. And this is the big problem. So I wanted to backtrack for a minute because I know we didn't talk about this and talk about why law exists in the first place. Why do we even have law? Because if you ask the average attorney who practices law, I bet you one thing that they can't do. They can't define law. So how can they not define that which they practice? I'm just asking for a friend. If attorneys can't define law, how are they practicing? And why law exists in the first place? So look at this in the beginning of time. We lived in the state of nature, right? Everybody got together and we had to cooperatively live. But it was the strong against the weak, right? Mm-hmm. Survival of the fittest. That's a state of nature. So we have rights, but who's going to enforce them? So we did, we came together as a collective. So this wonderful gentleman, Friedrich Bastiat, and he was French, he was a French economist, gets together and says, life, liberty, and property do not exist because men have made laws. On the contrary, it was the fact that life, liberty, and property exist in the first place that caused men to make laws in the first place. So we got together as a collective defense to secure individual liberties. That's all. And then what we did was instead of having to do that ourselves, we hired government as our substitute and agent to take our place, not in law, but as an agent. So they're not equals. They are just agents. They are not the sovereign. The people are the sovereign. So now we look at how this drift occurred, and we can find out one of the things that they did that is the most egregious is they amended the Constitution by changing the words. Mm. So the word state, for instance, right? If you ask somebody who the state is, they'll say the state is the government. The state is not the government. Massachusetts Constitution clearly sets forth who the state is, and it says it's the people. The body politic of the people is the state. So the government is just an agency of substitutes and agents. And therefore, the state is sovereign. Now, this is very important because you were talking about the treason argument, which we're going to get to. That's very important to understand. Unless you understand who the state is, you don't understand historically why the state is being threatened by people taking over the title of state. Because the state is sovereign. So now you have the government creating things called sovereign immunity. Well, how can the government create sovereign immunity when they're not sovereign? How can they immunize themselves? If all power derives from the people, as it says here, where did that power come from the people to immunize themselves?
It's an assumption thing, right?
It's a presumption. And they presumed that they have the power, and then they created their own power, and then presumed that they have it, and then everybody believes that they have it. There is no such thing as immunity. None. Zero results, nada. You can't have Article 5 exist that says accountable at all times and also have immunity.
This is fantastic. Wow. Great explanation. Unbelievably good. Yeah.
So one of the other things I wanted to bring up is if you read the plain text of the law, it's not ambiguous. Alabama Constitution, Article 1, Section 35. I don't know if we did this last time, but it says that the sole and only legitimate end of government is to protect the citizen enjoyment of life, liberty, and property. And when government assumes any other function, is usurpation and oppression.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? When it does anything other than securing your rights, which is everything it does 24 hours a day, every day, it's usurpation and oppression. So let's now add one more line. This is Tucker on Blackstone commentaries. Now, Blackstone was the foundation upon which all law in America was built.
Nice.
It was William Blackstone. We have an American version of William Blackstone. His name was St. George Tucker. He was a judge. And he said, if in a limited government, the public functionaries exceed the limits which the Constitution prescribes to their powers, Every act is an act of usurpation of the government, and as such, treason against the sovereignty of the people. Now, if you look at the statutes, I mean, if you look at the constitutions where they say treason, it says treason against the state. Now we need to understand who the state is. The state is the people, not the government.
So there's questions in here. Tell that to family court, because they come in and seem to presume that they have the authority over us.
Right. So what they did in family court is they switched out the law. So in 1935, they created the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Now, there was a Rules Enabling Act by Congress, which was 28 U.S. Code 2072B. That's the statute. And it gave gave the judges the ability to create rules for the court. Now, that is questionable constitutionally already.
Sure.
Because you can't give a branch authority to create legislation when legislation can't be created by the judiciary. You can't give judiciary quasi-legislative powers. It can't exist. The legislation has to come from the legislative branch itself. And there's a reason for that, logically. Because the judiciary is a judgment arm, all it can do is judge. And if you give it a creation, now it's judging its own creation.
An interpretation is creation, right? When they say interpret this way.
They have no interpretation ability. They have only declaratory ability, which is a mistake when people say that they have the authority to interpret. They don't. Find and interpret the Constitution, I dare you. They don't. And even Marbury versus Madison said that they can only declare what the law is, not make it, because they have no judicial authority. And in State v. Post, which is my favorite, 1845, it says, a court can only declare what the law is and whether it aligns with the law of God, fundamental law, or the constitutions of society, period.
There's another question in here. I've heard this quite often too. What does operating under the color of law mean?
It means when they're using statutes that are not aligned with the Constitution. And then when they're enforcing these decree laws made by fiat against the people, that is acting under color of law. Color means pretending to be.
Wow.
So it's color of law pretending to be law, just like color of authorities pretending to be authority. They have no lawful authority. If you read Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, it only gives Congress 17 powers. 18th power is an extra power for the previous 17. So none of that says anything about being able to take care of children.
So, Ron, how do you give this teeth to somebody that's getting abused by a color of law, statute law, or whatever? How does somebody use your system to fight back and hold them accountable so you can't do it, especially if you get a 90% batting average?
So when people call me and they have Child Protective Services at the door, I tell them to go to the website and pull out the Child Protective Services notice, sign it, and hand it over to the cop on the other side of the door and to the Child Protective Services worker. And they go bye-bye. Now, let me tell you a little secret. In order to get Title IV-E funding, which is where they get their incentive in the U.S. government, they have to go through the Social Security Act, which is part of Title IV-E. Now, here's a big problem for them. In the Social Security Act itself, it says in 1101D, it says that you can't take a child away from their parent without the parent's consent. So, if you can't take a child away from the parent without parent consent, and you have to confirm that by getting the funding that you followed the law, how did they do that without committing fraud? I'm going to tell you, because in 1935, they created the Rules Enabling Act, and the Rules Enabling Act pretty much took the law that we're talking about, and equity, which was supposed to be answerable to the law, and equity was just like, okay, that tree in my yard, I don't want to have remedy after the tree's already cut down. I want to make you stop cutting the tree in the first place. That's equity. So the judge had some discretion to put an injunction against you. But it was supposed to be sparse, and it was a completely different set of rules. What they did was they merged law and equity, which how can you merge something that's subject to the other? Now giving the judges equity and discretion all the time. Now, if
Wow.
you read Federalist 78, Federalist 78 says the judges and the judiciary has no will, aka no discretion. They're subject to the law, period. Just like all the other branches of government. But what they did was they merged it, and then they called children equity. Because they adopted something the founding fathers threw away called parens parenti, which is child of the state. So all of us are children of the state in the eyes of the government. Well, John Adams said that was parental tyranny, and they rejected it.
Excellent.
But they've adopted it, called it equity, and now they've completely removed your ability to have a jury trial, have due process, because they're doing it through discretion of the judge. And they're saying for the protection of the children, we're going to do it in quiet courts, when all courts by law have to be open to the public so we can scrutinize the court.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is not following law. They're actually in a term I call in continuity of treason.
Ooh.
If every time they violate the law, it's treason, as we just said it was, and they're doing everything for the sake of continuity of keeping the government going, then they're acting in a state of continuity of treason, by definition.
So Ron, when you're doing this and you get a 90% batting average, say you can't do this, and they listen because they have to look at the reality and the truth, and then they have to change their behavior. That's what people need to know, how to apply these things in real term. Because like if someone doesn't want, a judge says we're closed session, we don't want you in here, but you're saying no, I got the right as a citizen, I can walk in anywhere I want and sit and watch it. Is that right?
That's right. So what I've been doing is I've been trying to teach the people how to do this. So over the last 6 years, what I've done is I've done a structural audit of the entire country from founding. I said, okay, let's find out what the founding fathers actually put in place and then put it in writing. Let's reconstruct what the founding fathers put in place. And then I did. And then I said, okay, now that I have that in place, let's find out how they deviated and where the authority was, the chain of authority from that moment forward to find out where it broke. And I've tracked that too. So what they're acting under is color of law. Because there is no law, the chain broke a long time ago. And what they use is presumptions. They presume that you're guilty before proving it. They used to have to prove jurisdiction. They used to have to have judgment before they executed anything. So they had to, if a cop wanted to pull you over, they had to go to the court and get a judgment first. Because by definition, the cop can't judge law. And he can't judge his own cause. So you'd have to have a third party judge that for him and then give him the instrument to execute. That's not what's happening today. It's a collapse of our understanding of fundamental law. Once you understand fundamental law, you understand that it's called nemo judex in causa sua. That's one of the fundamental principles of law, and that is you can't be a judge in your own cause. You can't be judge, jury, and executioner. But that's exactly what they did in all the agencies. Another one is you can't delegate authority redelegated to you. You can't redelegate. So Congress redelegated their authority to agencies to make them in the executive branch to legislate rules. They were binding on the people, but they have no authority to bind on the people. And then if you read Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, it only has 17 distinct subject matters. The way they got around it was to legislate to an agency outside of their subject matter. So how, if they don't have the authority, how does the executive branch have the authority? They don't. So the CDC, the FCC, all these branches that were created, there is no constitutional grant for those agencies to exist, let alone have any authority to enact any legislation, period. Let me prove it. Let's read Massachusetts Constitution, verse Article 30, which was the model. In the government of the Commonwealth, the legislative department shall never, I know that's a hard word for lawyers, they don't understand the word never, exercise the executive or judicial powers or either of them. The executive shall never exercise the legislative or judicial powers or either of them. And the judicial should never exercise the legislative or executive powers or either of them. To the end, we may be a nation of laws and not of men. We have to be a nation of law that pre-existed the government. the unchanging rules of a Republican form of government. See, a republic is a form of government that is based on a fixed set of rule of law, not on a changing standard. And everyone must conform to that rule of law, even the people. Listen to this is Thomas Cooley, which was one of the judges in the 18th century. For the will of the people, as declared in the Constitution, is the final law. And the will of the legislature is only law when it's in harmony with, or at least not opposed to, that controlling instrument. And then it says, by the Constitution which they establish, they not only tie up their hands, then the official agencies, but their own hands as well. And neither the office of the state nor the whole people as an aggregate body are at liberty to change the fundamental law.
Can you translate that into English at my level?
Yes, it means law existed first before government, and all of us are subject to the same standard, both the people and the servants. And none of us can change that standard. We have to align with the standard. So all legislation needs to be in line with that standard of law that existed before the government.
Hmm. Now, you talked about in the last show how we had Kamala. That was, and you brought this up, and fantastic. I remember this was quite for a while there, at least, was all over the news. And you brought up that she was not eligible. And I when all of us looked at it, it was like, yeah, she's not, because her father, Jamaican, came to the United States and then eventually became a citizen, but Kamala was born to him before he was a U.S. citizen.
That's correct.
Correct? So she has no recourse in this.
That's correct.
And you brought that up. And so again, like we're talking about, there's people that are treasonous because she went forward knowing that we knew, and we call you and we, the people, because you're speaking for us, we the people, called it out. And so they continued forward. So it's treasonous. So
it is treason. In fact, Emmer D. Vattel in Law of Nations, which is enshrined in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 10 of the Constitution. So in other words, this book called Law of Nations that existed, it was written in 1758, right here. And this book, Benjamin Franklin carried around 2 copies of this book. He said this book couldn't have been written at a better time. So he actually brought one to the Constitutional Convention. And our understanding of citizenship and what it means to be a citizen and natural-born citizen comes from this book. And it's enshrined in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 10 of the Constitution. And this defines natural-born citizen as one whom a child is born to American citizen parents, is a natural-born citizen.
Yeah.
And in the U.S. Constitution, it says you can't be president unless you're a natural-born citizen. Now, John Jay, one of the framers of the Constitution and one of the ones who wrote the Federalist Papers, wrote to George Washington that it's important that we only have natural-born citizens because of loyalty. We can't expect somebody born foreign and to foreign influence and to foreign control of our military. You can't give our control of military somebody who might have different alliances. That's why you had to be born to U.S. citizen parents.
Yeah. And my daughter was born in Guam, and Guam is a territory, so it's not a state, but she was born on a U.S. military installation, which is considered U.S. territory.
Yeah, but she was born to U.S. citizens.
Yes.
That's the difference.
It didn't matter really, if we could have been in Spain or wherever, because she has a U.S. citizen, then she's eligible to run for president.
So, and that's the distinction, because there was a time for what's his name? He ran for president against Bush. John McCain.
John McCain.
John McCain. This is the same issue we have with John McCain. And Mitch Romney's not a natural-born citizen either. Ted Cruz is not a natural-born citizen.
Right.
So it's not a partisan thing.
Yeah.
Obama is definitely not a natural-born citizen. He's so far removed from a natural-born citizen because not only was his parents not born here, he wasn't born here. So he was born in Zanzibar.
Hey, Ron, and was Goofy Kabbalah and Iraq was I thought their mothers were U.S. citizens.
No. See, that's his distinction. you had to be in the United States 9 months, and Barack Obama's mother was actually in Kenya. She was in Kenya for most of that time, and she got on a plane and she was heading to Hawaii, but she didn't make it. They landed in Zanzibar, where he was actually given birth.
But she wasn't, was she a US citizen
She
herself?
was not.
Oh,
She wasn't, because you have to be here 9 months, and it follows the father. And you know what? Barack Obama's father is not even Barack Obama Senior. That's a whole other issue. His father was Mohammed Saboud of the Saboud cult, and they had 3 different locations of Saboud cult: Kenya, Hawaii, and Chicago. Does that sound familiar?
How about that?
Yeah. And if you look at Mohammed Saboud and you look at Barack Obama side by side, they look like the same person. And guess who else was a Saboud cult member? The person who was on the Loretta Fuddy, who was on the plane who it crashed, who's the one who created the Hawaiian birth certificate.
so they took her out. Was it an accident? They took her out because they didn't want her to reveal.
I don't know, but they filmed the entire taking out. So you can see the crash. You can go watch the crash. With Loretta Fuddy, you can't see her face after the fact, but you can see that there was a plane crash. But if you look at how people reacted in that video, it's very strange. It was almost like they were trained.
Almost. Michael might know more about how to do that kind of crap.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. All that matters is that he was not a natural born citizen, and the Constitution prohibits him from being. Oh, there you go.
Wow.
See, I got friends that they kept saying, "Oh no, the mother and or the father were U.S. citizens, born U.S. citizens, and so they're allowed to have because of the parents, no matter where they were born, like Michael's daughter." But no, that's not the case. So they were not natural born citizens. They just came over later.
No, the distinction was, first of all, it follows the father. And secondly, the mother had to have been in the United States for the last however many years. And she spent most of her life in Kenya. And then she went to Indonesia, and she married again to, what's his name? Solo, the Soro. What the heck is his name?
Soros Creek?
No. Barack Obama's second father, his stepfather. Oh, I used to know.
That's the one they claim is his father.
Yeah, no, that's not his father. He inherited $150 million from that stepfather. And his stepfather was in line with and working with the CIA and through George W. Bush. So Barack Obama, when he was a little kid, was coming to the United States, and they were giving him candy. So they have pictures of George H. Bush giving Barack Obama candy as a child.
Wow.
So in the funeral of Bush, you can see George W. Bush giving a candy to Barack Obama's wife.
Husband or wife?
Well, let's not get off on the conspiracy
Another
trail.
tangent, right?
I can tell you what's written. I don't need to rely on conspiracies ever. I only need to rely on what is written, and I'm a big advocate of reading what the law says and pointing out how lawyers don't understand law because they've never learned it. What they've done is since 1938, they've taught them how to practice procedure and creates the gatekeeping system that keeps us from the law. So if you have a bunch of lawyers learning how to learn the decree of the court and the court rules and the court rulings, but they never understand the law that underpins it all, do they really know law? Because law is a rule of right. And without that understanding, you don't really know law. So if you ask a lawyer, what is law? They're going to have a clue. They're not going to have any clue. Law is a rule of right. That's the proper definition.
Have you asked lawyers that question directly? They get like a dumb look on their face?
Yeah, they skirt around it because they don't want to answer it. But that's funny, right? Because if you ask a lawyer, I dare you to try it. Any of you ask a lawyer, what is law? Please define it, and where does it come from? And they're going to get both of those questions wrong. Isn't that a problem? I mean, think about it. Is that a problem or not?
Oh yeah.
If a lawyer can't even define law and where it comes from, how can they practice it? I'm just asking for a friend. I just want to know for a friend. How can you practice law if you don't even know what it is?
Good point.
Shouldn't be able to. Yeah.
They've been fudging around with it for a long time, and look how messed up the whole society and everything they've made it. And then you birthed out the deep state of that, which, you know, because it's an outgrowth of not obeying the laws, God's law.
So on We the People too, I spent a lot of time building out a 12-week course, 12 modules on defining 12 principles that everybody can understand. Once people understand the 12 principles, the first one is law precedes government, the second one is rights are pre-political, third one is sole purpose of government to secure our rights, so on and so forth. If people just understood those 12 principles, we wouldn't be in the bind we're in, because those principles are binary. Either you know them or you don't. Either law is preceding government or it's not. There's no third option here. Either rights are pre-political or they're not. Everything you read in law, rights are pre-political. They come before the government. Read the Declaration of Independence open line. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. They're not endowed by government. They came first. Declaration of Independence was before the U.S. Constitution, if I remember correctly. And then the opening line of the U.S. Constitution says, "We the people do ordain and establish this Constitution, not we the government."
So, Ron, explain to the to everybody listening how, once they take the course, and how they use your system to actually enact and get things done, because that's what's most important. Like learning, but then you got to make it something happen.
Right. So the next part of my course, which is the one I'm working on now, which is classes 13 through 24, is now the practical reality. How do we create the record? How do we send government notices and instruct them and ask them very simple questions? By what authority? If you can remember one question, you need to ask one question alone to government. By what authority? You're claiming you have authority. Where does it come from? Show me the grant. Because one thing we need to know, that in our system of government, we have a system of delegated authority. We don't have a system of implied or express authority. It is either it's delegated or it's not. Thomas Paine said there are two types of power: that which is expressly delegated, which is, by definition, trust, and that which is assumed, which is usurpation. I like that last line here. That last one is on there for a reason. That last quote at the bottom of that page you're looking at. If you love liberty, wealth is better than liberty. It's my favorite quote.
Yep.
Because that's what people need to understand. The reason we are in this mess is because the people won't get off their tuchus. Now, the Declaration of Independence knew that. It says we're slow to suffer while evil is insufferable. The Declaration of Independence states what the state of man is, because they understood human nature. We're not getting off our behind. So we call them the hand lickers. You know, the people go around and they just lick the hands of government. They bow down and crouch down and lick their hands and say, "Please, sir, let me have another. Just don't make the change so difficult."
So this is incredible. Your website, wethepeople2.com. So
.us.
All of the people that are having these questions in here, why Child Protective Services is an unlawful agency. Now, I've had people on my show that, and you've seen them on TV, where they came in and they took their children from them at a gas station. They did what you're doing, Ron. They just went in and they found out what their legal rights were, and they came back and they finally got their child. But you need to understand this, because we're under threat by this criminal cabal. Cartel. There you go. Thank you.
It is a criminal cartel acting in constant usurpation. or continuity of treason. They're acting under authority, color of authority, that doesn't exist. They don't have the authority to take children without a predicate harm. So in Massachusetts, there are 15,622 kids who were removed in 2025.
Good God.
Now, of those 15,622, they admit in their own report that 86% of them were taken without any harm. My estimation in law is 94.6% of them were taken without any harm. But here's the most damning statistic. Of the ones who enter Child Protective Services, because let's say you say that they're here to protect children, right? That means 6% actually were in harm's way. Let's agree that 6% they've protected those 6% of killed children, having to, of course, violate the other 94%'s rights and destroy those families to get to the 6% they're protecting. But here's the other side of this. Of the 15,622 who go in Child Protective Services, the rate increases from 6% who are going to be in harm's way to 5 to 7 times more likely to be abused in Child Protective Services custody.
Whoa.
7 times more likely to die. That's their own statistics, not my statistics. I can back them up. So we have to understand what is Child Protective Services when they're not protecting children at all, and they're doing it for money. Title IV funding that Congress can't give them by law. Because look at Article 1, Section 8. There is no such power in the U.S. Constitution to give Congress the authority to take children away from parents. None. It doesn't exist. It's not an enumerated power. It's by definition usurpation.
How do we, and they're making how much money per child? And they're just take them?
I forget what the number is. I have them written down. I have the
It's like over $100,000, right?
I have an entire report. If you're ever interested, I have an entire report I did on Child Protective Services, and with exemplars, with exhibits, showing how a child was taken because the Child Protective Services, the father refused to get a vitamin K shot for his 9-month-old. He asked the doctor, he said, "Is this mandatory? Do I have to get a vitamin K shot?" The doctor says, "No, but if you don't, I'm going to call Child Protective Services." But he said, "I'm not going to do that." And by the way, vitamin K shots are not vitamin K. They're synthetic drugs. They're not even vitamin K. They're synthetic chemicals. And you give it to a newborn because when in the birthing process, they could have blood clots. This is a 9-month-old. So what happened is he filed a report, a 93A in Massachusetts, and the 93A asserted the child looks healthy and well on the report. At the same time, he said medical neglect. And even Child Protective Services entered it as non-emergency response. So what danger is that child in? How can you have medical neglect and look healthy and well? And what was the reason? A refusal of a vitamin K shot for a 9-month-old that has zero reason to have a vitamin K shot. And the parents knew there was a black box warning on the vitamin K shot, which is why they didn't want to do it.
Wow.
The doctor needed a punch in the throat, not just questions like that. Man, you gonna make my kid?
It's part of a cartel, like we're talking about. It's a money-making machine. That's why they're doing it. They don't care about us. They don't care about our children.
No.
They lie when they say that. They care about our children so they can take them and make money off them and abuse them.
So now if we read that again, Alabama Constitution, the sole and only legitimate end of government is to secure our rights. Every other function is not usurpation and oppression. How can you think about what they're doing and not understand what this is?
Mm-hmm.
So Ron, what do you do? So what do you do? How do you go after the doctor and the whole system for doing that? How does your system plug into play to hold them accountable?
You have to do notices. You have to do notices, and you have to do a set of notices. So my second portion, which is now my green series, I'm teaching the people how to take what they learned in the blue series and turn it into a record building. So they're learning how to do notice of default, affidavit of default, presumption notice, and then writ. So that they have this 5-document package that creates an unstoppable record, proving without a doubt, not feeling, not emotion, not rhetoric, what happened. And then you can use it and actionably in court. And then the court will do what the court's going to do, and we have a method of dealing with them too.
So the next question is how to use lawful notices, affidavits, and courts of record to stop overreach.
So, like I said in the earlier, that we have a right to instruct our representatives. So it's not the notice that makes the gives it binding power. It's the Constitution. So when you say, hey, the Constitution says that you're accountable at all times, that's already black letter law. All you're doing is saying, show me how you're not accountable at all times. Can they show me in Massachusetts, anybody in Massachusetts, can any of my legislatures show me that they're not accountable at all times? When the Massachusetts Constitution says accountable at all times, how can they show me that they're not accountable at all times? They can't. So when they don't, I have it on the record. So then I send them an affidavit of default. Well, I said to show me, you didn't show me. So the default is only tracking that I gave you an opportunity to answer and you didn't. That's called due process. Due process requires notice and opportunity. You have to give somebody notice and give them an opportunity to respond. And if they don't respond, well, now you use an affidavit of default, notice of default to say, I gave you an opportunity and you didn't. So you're defaulted in your ability to respond. And then you take all of that and you create an affidavit of fact. So that see how it's going. So everything is factual and on the record. And then when you go to court with an unassailable record, what are they going to say? They're either going to commit treason or they're not.
So do they realize that they'd be committing treason once you go through this process with them?
It all depends on how you tell them. So I don't use rhetoric with them. I'm very surgical. I tell them exactly what it means in law and show them where it means, where it says it. So if you show them Tucker Blackstone, it says what it says. It's not my opinion. It says what it says. Yeah, that's my book, Rule of Law. And my other book underneath, Don't Dine a Rowboat. Yeah. Which is my human nature book. That book is all about human nature, which is my specialty. Before all of this nightmare.
Wow. Yeah, so there was a question about what happens to a child if the parent goes to jail for kind of some of the abuses of the law, like we're talking about. What happens to the child when there's no other parent or anyone that the child can go to?
So Child Protective Services was put in place for a reason, right? It was put in place for children who actually needed it. So it's supposed to be a service. That's not what it's turned into.
Yeah.
It's turned to a cartel, money racketing agency.
Yeah.
And that's factual. We're not saying that there shouldn't be a mechanism for children who are actually legitimately in danger. That's not what we're saying. But even when children are legitimately in danger, there are rules. That's what due process is for. Due process was put in place to protect the people. And due process is not sanctioned by the government rules. It's sanctioned by settled maxims of law, settled principles of law that predated the government. So that way, government couldn't manipulate the protections because their sole purpose was to secure your rights. So when you have substantive due process and all these other terms that they've created to pretty much remove you from the ability to have due process, what they've done is they've violated the Constitution and tried to amend the Constitution with words.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that one woman that was Congresswoman that called out Child Protective Services.
And they killed her.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look on We the People too on that Child Protective Services page you had, at the bottom of the page, there are actually court hearings where Child Protective Services on the record says, you know what? I didn't know I couldn't lie. Where's the Constitution say you can't lie to take a child? That's what they actually said in court. And it's not the only.
It's okay to lie.
Yes, and she actually asked the judge, where does it say I can't lie?
Oh,
he said,
what else
what
needs
do
to
you
get
mean, where does
punched
it
in
say
the
I can't
head?
lie? Common sense.
Goodness gracious.
So
Yeah.
it's Nancy Schaefer.
Yeah.
She was a prominent critic of Child Protective Services and published a report titled The Corrupt Business of Child Protective Services. She was found dead in 2010 alongside her husband in what was ruled a murder-suicide. Wow.
So if they don't like what you have to say, that's what they do. But that's why the people in aggregate have to speak out. You can't allow one person to take all of it. You need all of us to understand the same 12 principles. And once you understand the 12 principles, it's easy. The first principle is law precedes government. That's very easy. Law comes first. Government doesn't make law. Government enacts rules in line with law. In other words, government enacts rules in line with rules of right. If they're not protecting your right, they're not government. They're not acting under their charter. Period. Second is rights are pre-political. Rights come first. The whole reason we have this exercise is because we had rights. So laws precedes government, rights are pre-political. Third is the sole end of government is to secure your rights. That's number 3. Is this very difficult? I mean, this is not difficult. 4, all authority has to be delegated. If they can't show me the charter, show me where in this book that we give them the authority, they don't have it. All authority has to come from the people by written charter. Not some, all. There is no such thing as implied powers. Government doesn't get to give itself power. That'd be absurd. Why write it down? Right? The Constitution is a trust document. And when they breach it, they breach trust. It's a cage.
Yeah.
It is not a suggestion. It is not a living document. It is a fixed document until it's amended.
Yep.
And yeah, so
somebody was in the chat. They thought that she was from Georgia, and yes, she was actually from Georgia. Georgia is incredibly corrupt. It's been corrupt, I think, from the get-go since we broke away from Britain. I think they still had and have since had an influence on Georgia to a major extent.
I want to know what state isn't corrupt. I mean, right now I have a lot of litigation in Florida, and Florida is extremely corrupt.
Wow.
I mean, I can give you case in point of everything that Florida is doing, and doing it in writing. I have paper from the Florida bar admitting in writing things that I said that they were doing, and they put it in writing. Yeah, that's what we're doing.
So
it's got to be rooted out, right, at the base level by people rising up and taking the power back.
Yes.
Why I think Ron's classes are so important, and people need to see it. And really, even like leaders of organizations and groups should learn this and get their churches or their groups. Really, a lot of Christians need to rise up and understand that they should all go to Ron's site, sign up, let him expand their class. Even, I don't know, Michael, maybe you and all the other super duper like influential podcaster guys should maybe run his course online or something where, once a week you can teach a lesson and then how to implement it. I mean, that would be pretty cool to really empower the people that were hungry for power, not in that sense, we're hungry for justice, the power to restore justice. I should say it like that.
Can you imagine if every single one of the influencers actually understood the 12 principles and then told their audience like ad nauseum, and everybody spoke in unison about the same 12 things that we can prove?
That's the only way we're going to
get distracted with everything else that's going on that they distract us with. It is amazing. We need to understand that the enemy is called the circularity. We are living with an enemy, and it's got a name. It's called the circularity. The founding fathers warned us about the circularity when all 3 branches of government collapse into one. Now think about the Bar Association. Think about lawyers. In order to get a part of the judiciary, you have to be a lawyer, right? Well, how about the executive branch? Do you have lawyers in the executive branch, in the prosecutors, in the sheriffs in 9 states? Yes. Well, that's a different branch of government. How is the executive branch answering to the judiciary, to a judicial commission? How does the judiciary have control over their career? Is that a problem? And then what about the legislative branch, lobbyists? When the Bar Association and the judicial branch is taking money from the lawyers and making them pay for lobbyists in the legislative branch, never mind the codifying committees that put the law in place are all lawyers. So we have all three branches of government being controlled by the Bar Association.
Right.
That is,
So
by
explain
definition,
to
a
us
collapse.
Explain to us the difference between lawyers and attorneys.
Well, a lawyer is a law sayer, a sayer of law. So that's what everyone was. I mean, that's James Madison. We had Benjamin Franklin helping the neighbors prepare documents. This was standard practice. You have not only a right to petition, you have a right to help your neighbor petition.
Wow. But
what they did was unapproved practice of law statutes to prevent you from being able to speak the law. Now, that's absolutely ridiculous. The number one imported item in the colonies was the law books. Everyone knew the law.
Wow.
The law is yours. The people own the law. But then they create these attorneys or the attorneys, which means to tear away, attorn you from your stuff. Now think about this absurdity. Have you ever heard of civil asset forfeiture?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you get into a car accident, or you get pulled up by a cop, and you have a Lamborghini, and the cop says, "I suspect this Lamborghini was involved in a crime." So they seize the Lamborghini.
Yeah.
They never charge you with anything. They seize it, and then the court captioning says, "The state of whatever versus Lamborghini." How absurd is that? How can the Lamborghini speak for itself? How can it defend itself? How can it have a day in court? How can you prove innocent or prove guilty? How does any of that exist? That is the absurdity on paper. And that is happening every single day. And then when they win, they get to take that Lamborghini, the person who took it from you, and they get to sell it and use the money for their own department.
Good God.
So
Now, I just saw this recently where a guy had purchased a new car and he was driving with it, and they made a mistake at the car dealership and they reported it as stolen. So the police saw it driving. So they came, they stopped it, they arrested the guy, put him in handcuffs, and took him in until they found out that it was actually his car. I mean, what are you going to do?
It's just, if people lived under law, that's what protects us. It's not people that protect us; it's the law that protects us. And when those in government who have a sole and only legitimate job of protecting our rights have chosen not to, we're back in a state of nature, or worse, we're a state of tyranny. And that's what the founding fathers fought against in 1776. If you read the Declaration of Independence today, it's actually quite comical, because if you read the 27 grievances in the Declaration of Independence, they're happening to us every single day. We're reliving 1776. We didn't learn our lesson. And it's the people who have the option to change it.
Yep.
But they're not uncomfortable enough. And that's the problem.
I think people don't do things because, one, it takes a lot of work and they think it's above their head, hard to learn. Because people think, well, attorneys lawyers go to school for a long time and they're smart people and this and that. So it's kind of, they assume it's too hard to understand. But I know you've made it really broken down simple at the kind of the 5th, 6th grade level. So it's not that hard to understand, and then it's not that hard to enact. And it's really meant to be done as a community of people. If there's a violation, right? We want a lot of people filing these, whatever you call them, against the offenders, which would be the people in the government. Is that right?
Yeah, we need to file notice. We need to put them on notice that what they're doing is a violation. And we need to act in one voice. And not accept their nonsense. Not accept what we have immunity. Show me where. We need to start asking, by what authority do you have immunity? Show me. Massachusetts Constitution says you don't. Show me how you get to the right to supersede the Constitution. I'm kind of confused. We get them to admit it in writing because I want them to say the quiet part out loud. That's all. I'm not asking for much. Just say the quiet part out loud. Just say you're my tyrant. Just say it, please. Just say that you want to control me. Just tell me.
Yeah. And you can go to court and defend yourself. My wife did an excellent job. She wasn't defending herself. She was pressing a case against a guy that basically stole money from us doing odd jobs around our home. And he had put illegitimate, these people that were coming in didn't know how to do anything. And so he was making money off of us. So anyway, we took him to court. We won. Of course, he never paid. He went bankrupt and left the city. But I got pulled over one time for speeding. I came off a 65 highway. This is in Virginia. And it changed. But it was really, I'd driven this road many times and I didn't slow down. But so I got pulled over, got a ticket. So I went to court. I was a SEAL at the time, so I had all my medals. I wore my uniform, so I was looking sharp, So I come in the courtroom and I was watching to see how the proceedings went, so I could get an idea, how to present my case. And this guy was a hanging judge. It was like there was other guys in there in the uniform. They were like lower rank guys, and he was like, "Go through that door and go directly to jail." And go through that door. I was like, "Whoa!" So I came up and I talked to the officer was there. If he hadn't been there, I probably got off. But anyway, he was there. I said, "Officer so-and-so, was I wearing my seatbelt?" So I'm establishing that I'm a good citizen. And he said, "Yes, you." And he's looking at me. He's like, "Oh shit." So I was like, and blah blah blah, and so do I have a record? And there's no record on you. And so I go on, I asked the judge for leniency, can you throw this case out? And he said, "Well, can you do like, where you do the classes?" And I was like, "Well, sir, my unit's supposed to deploy and I won't be able to do that." And he's like, "Okay." So, so I got off completely free from a hanging judge. So you can, if you know the law, like I know the law enough, like you're talking about, I'm not nearly on your level, Ron, but I think your courses would probably, and I'm going to do your courses because I want to go to the next level and I want to start presenting some of this information like you're talking about, Marcus, so that we, the people, can, push back on this corruption, this cartel that's taken over our judicial system.
And
I think if you got all the, if you even, once you learn it, Michael, how he runs the course.
Yeah.
And then, bring that on and get all the other guys that do this and really make it a mass effort. And then you really can ignite the people, and then it'll start to get its own momentum and snowball and get bigger.
Yeah. Because we've done this with other things, how to form a militia, and there's, the rights that you have within your town and so forth. You can form a militia if that's part of the Constitution. So they try and dissuade us from doing that, of course, but these are all legal aspects that we all need to be aware of, especially going forward, because who knows, if you look back in time to where we had the last Civil War, we're in the same lineup planetary wise as the last Civil War. And every time this planetary alignment has happened, we had World War II and Revolutionary War, all these different times. We're in the same planetary alignment. So it's all about energy, consciousness. And I think our consciousness, if we are aware, like you're doing an excellent job of informing us, Ron, is if we're at that level, we can avoid a lot of these conflicts.
And that's the key, right? None of us want war. We want peace. And
Yeah.
nobody wins in a war. Nobody does. There's no people, nobody comes out a victor of a war. We all come out losing something. So we want to avoid it. And we have a wonderful country. Still, on paper, we still have freedom. But what we're doing is allowing the creature who's out of the cage, and we're saying, well, the creature's going to put itself back in the cage. Think about that for a second. When has the creature ever put itself back in the cage? If you see a vicious lion in the zoo, you say, all right, creature, go put yourself in the back of the cage. Is that ever going to happen? No, you have to sit and a dart, put it to sleep, and put it back in the cage. That's what you have to do.
Hey, can,
That's the only way we can fix this is that people put the stupid creature back in the cage by demanding them show the grant. Show me where you have the authority or get me back in your damn cage. That's it.
Yep.
hey, I wanna, Michael, if it's okay, if I can ask Ron a question. I think it's important to understand where Ron's heart is coming from and where his inspiration is coming from. Because he's not gonna say unless I ask, but he didn't make a penny on this stuff. He's doing, Ron, just explain why you're doing this and how long you've been doing it and what your motivation is. I think it's important that people understand the heartbeat of where you're coming from as a Christian.
In 2020, first of all, I'm a student of human history and human behavior. I'm an expert in human behavior. That's what I was doing. And I had a podcast teaching human behavior called Gone Fishing Podcast in 2020.
Nice.
And just when all this stuff was happening, and I said, I understand this pattern. I remember reading and understanding what happened in Germany. I have two children with disabilities, two of them. One is 25 and one is a little younger, and they're completely disabled. In Germany, they took children who were disabled, they backed the van into the driveways of parents who had disabled children, and they euthanized them in the driveway.
Good God.
I will never allow that to happen to my children. So I got really involved. Not when I had to get involved, because then it's too late. I got involved before I needed to get involved. So then I started learning, and I knew Fauci was lying. I didn't know why he was lying, but I know human behavior. I know the tells. And he was lying. And then he was contradicting himself. I said, boy, he's lying. So We the People too actually got started based on COVID. It was a COVID site first. In fact, the old COVID site was taken down by the CIA, I believe. And they left me a little message to let me know that they didn't like it. But they took me down 2 years ago on Christmas. So I put it back up immediately. My children were ill at the time, and while they were convalescing, I was pretty much there. I didn't sleep very much. So I put it up within 24 hours, the website went back up. But we started as a COVID resources website. Not making conclusions, just asking questions and showing people the evidence. So if on the website, there's a health tab, and under the health tab, that says COVID and COVID resources. That's the original website. That's what was there. We had 3 tabs. We also did municipal accounting review. We were Doge before Doge was cool.
Wow.
So we would go out and we would ask for all the school records because of all of the money they got from COVID. Where did all that money go? So we would do a forensic audit of the money with a forensic accountant and try to figure out where the money went. We found so much millions of dollars of fraud. We just never went anywhere because the accountant decided he wasn't going to do it anymore. So, but we have we have perfected the entire system. If we had people who were interested in doing that, we can actually go and audit. We found corruption. We found they were laundering. They had one school had a school, then had a public pool, and they were laundering money through the public pool. So the money would have went in and then went right back out. So we caught it all.
Incredible.
And it's so much worse than that. Money, you want to follow the corruption, follow the money.
Wow. Outstanding. Wow. It's incredible to have you on. And we the people, your website, we the people 2.us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then Don't Die in a Rowboat. I like that because you're talking about the subconscious mind.
Yep.
That a lot of people don't understand. So I saw the stuff that you saw and was calling it out. So that sounds like a great book. I'm looking at both your books. Getting both your books. That one, Don't Die in a Rowboat, and Rule of Law: A Nation of Laws, Not of Men. So we have the links in the description box, and I put them in the chat too for you guys. So looking forward to seeing and doing some of these books and reading these books in your course, and then getting back with you and maybe going a little bit deeper.
Yeah, that'd be great. Once people have an understanding of the basics, it's hard to go over to how to do the notices unless they understand the basics, why we do the notices,
Mhm.
and what the law is. If you know your basic principles, no government can confuse you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the whole issue. Government confuses the people because they don't know the law. And law is not hard. Thomas Jefferson said the law should be so simple you can understand it while plowing your fields so that you know when you're under oppression. It's not supposed to be difficult. It's not supposed to take a lawyer. It's supposed to take a person
Well,
who's informed.
God wrote his laws on our heart, right? It's in our
That's
mind,
right.
in our heart, and it's our DNA. God made us that way. We
You
know.
know rules of right, right? You know what's right and wrong. Do you not?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm still bad, but I get spankings and I autocorrect.
And then knowing your rights and having the rest of your community, back you up. Because like we're talking about that one unfortunate congresswoman that called out, fraud and corruption. She ended up being killed with her husband. Wow, that's crazy. And that was probably a message they wanted to send to people. That should have really stoked everybody to really come out and go heavy on it, but they didn't. So that's one of the problems that I think we have as society right now. Like you said, Ron, there's hasn't been enough pain, and there's a lot of people that just don't care to get involved. It really hurts us.
Right, but we've stopped things with 100 notices. So you can't act in one. If you send one notice, they can take the one notice and throw it in the trash. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
But when 1,000 notices come in, they can't hide those 1,000 notices. They can't do anything about them, and they listen every single time.
Hmm.
So you need mass assembly of the people.
Right.
And the people can do it. You can fix all these problems. Nothing in government is beyond fixing because the foundation already says they can't do it. Like flock cameras. Flock cameras are not a possibility. If you read the Fourth Amendment as it's written, it's not a possibility. You can't even get there because you can't surveil at all.
Wow.
Plain and simple. It says so in plain English that everybody can understand. And it says it in every state constitution. But we ignore them ignoring the Constitution. And then they pretend that they quote it. Like the Supreme Court just had a ruling against natural born citizenship or citizenship.
Birthright,
Completely outside of what the law says. Completely contradictory to what the framers of the 14th Amendment said. The framers of the 14th Amendment said, of course, this doesn't include aliens and people who don't belong here.
Hey, I know about running out of time or something, but Ron, how would people in mass, because I think everybody's pissed off as heck about this birthright citizenship, Supreme Court. I mean, those people they should be held for treason for ruling that way, of course.
Yeah.
How do we as a whole, everybody listening, and how do we fight back on that particular issue?
Well, very easy. You see, the Supreme Court had a Chevron deference decision. Remember that Chevron deference was overturned because for 80 years, what they did was they deferred to administrative agencies who don't have any authority, were never meant to have any authority. They have no enumerated powers in the Constitution, nor do they have any subject matter power in the Constitution, but they gave themselves power. So Chevron deference was removed because a bunch of people got together and sent notices. 10 notices, in fact, killed Chevron deference. And people will never know that. 10 notices, and it was a group of people. I signed with them, but it wasn't me who did that particular notice. But we signed 10 notices and sent them to the Supreme Court. I send notices to the Supreme Court all the time. The Supreme Court listens, but they can't listen if you don't instruct them. So people complain all the time, but what did you instruct government to do? If you don't instruct them, there's a vacuum, and the vacuum will be filled by lobbyists. So you choose.
Brilliant. Very good. All right, gentlemen. Thanks so much. Great information. This is extremely valuable for everybody. I'd like to have you come back and maybe we can talk about some other stuff that should go away, like the IRS and all these other. I've done a really good job on that, so that will be a great discussion. A lot that gets people attention. That big one. So we'll have you back on. We'll talk about some of these other issues. Come up with another list, and we'll hit it again. So thanks so much. This is very, very valuable. like I said, everyone wonders about this. How can they get away with it? And we're teaching people how they cannot.
That's right. But it takes the people to understand that there is no such thing as immunity. And when the government says immunity, ask them, show me where. And what they're going to do is they're going to point to themselves. So then you say, show me where you had the authority to give yourself authority.
Absolutely.
Very logical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time for we the people to rise up.
Yeah, very much so. All right, gents, thanks so much.
Alrighty.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Michael. Thanks, Ron.